Good afternoon, everyone. Bon après-midi, tout le monde. Ça me fait très plaisir de vous accueillir à la séance d'aujourd'hui qui s'intitule Vers l'avenir du gouvernement, les faiseurs et les rêveurs. So today's session is entitled Into the Future of the Government of Canada. So Doers and Dreamers. Bonjour, que vous soyez un peu partout au Canada. Hello. So what is innovation without creativity? We're going to discuss this with our fantastic panelists this afternoon. Donc, lorsqu'on parle d'innovation sans créativité, on va en discuter avec nos panélistes cet après-midi. So welcome to this session. I would like to begin by acknowledging that the land on which I'm joining you from today, I'm actually in southeastern New Brunswick right now. So I'm joining you in this traditional unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. And we're very grateful to have this opportunity to be present in this territory. So no matter where you find yourself in the country right now, I invite you to think about this and the unceded traditional territory you find yourself on and have this reflection as well. Donc, j'aimerais débuter par reconnaître que le territoire sur lequel je me joins en ce moment, c'est le territoire non traditionnel, non cédé du peuple Mi'kmaq. Donc, je suis dans la région du sud-est du Nouveau-Brunswick en ce moment et on est reconnaissant donc d'avoir l'occasion d'être présent sur ce territoire. Peu importe où vous vous trouvez en ce moment au Canada, d'est en ouest, dans chacune des provinces, dans chacun des territoires, je vous invite à avoir cette réflexion. So as we move through today's session, please share your comments in the chat space. You may probably be familiar with this already if you've participated in these sessions before. So we do have a chat space where you can comment and also ask your questions by using the Q&A button in the language of your choice as well. So you can also vote for questions that you like by clicking on a little thumbs up button. Donc, cette session va être offerte de façon bilingue. Les panélistes vont aussi vous adresser dans les deux langues officielles et vous pouvez aussi poser les questions dans la langue officielle de votre choix. Donc, au fur et à mesure qu'on va progresser pendant cette session, vous êtes invité à partager, en fait, vous pouvez clavarder dans la boîte de clavardage, mais vous pouvez aussi poser vos questions dans la petite boîte Q&A qui est prévue à cet effet dans la langue de votre choix. Et vous pouvez aussi voter pour les questions que vous préférez ou que vous souhaitez qu'ils soient posées aux panélistes en cliquant sur le petit bouton Thumbs Up. Donc, aujourd'hui, on a le plaisir d'accueillir 3 panélistes qui vont partager leurs expériences, leur parcours professionnel, leur expertise. C'est vraiment un grand privilège de les accueillir. Alors, on va les rencontrer sans plus tarder. Today, we have 3 panelists joining us, and I'm very privileged to be able to present Erin to you as well as Deepika and Anya. They will be sharing their expertise with you, their professional background, their thoughts around today's topic. So let's meet them without further ado. Donc, ça me fait plaisir de vous présenter Erin. Si vous voulez prendre la parole et vous présenter, Erin, this is your time to introduce yourself.
Oui, bonjour tout le monde. Je m'appelle Erin Percival. Je travaille à cette heure avec Transport Canada. Je suis le directeur d'une division qui s'appelle Félicitations des services numériques. Donc, l'innovation, c'est quelque chose que nous faisons à chaque jour. Before that, I was a free agent for about 4.5 years. And before that, I started my career comme scientifique avec le ministère de la Défense. Donc, j'ai commencé dans l'année 2010 avec la fonction publique. Donc, bonjour tout le monde.
Thank you. Merci, Erin. Le micro est à vous, Deepika. Now is your chance to introduce yourself as well.
Sure. Thank you, Isabel. Hi, Erin. I just wanted to correct you on the pronunciation of my name, if I might. No worries, Isabel. It's a tough one. It's Deepika.
Thank you, Deepika.
And I've been a public servant for about 12 years. I'm NCR based. I started with the health portfolio, moved to the heritage portfolio, and then became a free agent about 4 years ago. So, and I've been engaged in public sector innovation since 2011. But I do it out in the wilds mostly, so I haven't really spent much time in labs or hubs.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing with us, Deepika. I apologize for your name pronunciation. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for being here. Anya, good afternoon.
Merci. Bon après-midi. Je suis Anya Lizowski, and I am a Director General of strategic engagement and change management at the Science and Parliamentary Infrastructure branch at Public Services and Procurement Canada. I have been with the public service for about 20 years and was very active in our youth network many years ago, and really excited to be here today. And like Isabel, I'm joining from the unceded territory and ancestral land of the Mi'kmaq people as well.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Vania. Realizing now that I didn't introduce properly myself. So I'm Isabel. I work at the Office of the Commissioner of Official Languages of Canada in the Atlantic region. So this is why I'm here in Brunswick, Canada at this time. Donc, je travaille au Commissariat aux langues officielles du Canada dans la belle région de l'Atlantique à l'est du Canada. Donc, sans plus tarder, so we have great questions, and I'm very privileged to be able to chat with all of you today, and reminding participants as well. And I'm seeing that our team at the Federal Youth Network is working very hard in the background there, dans les coulisses. So you're seeing in your discussion box, not panelists, but yes, panelists as well, and participants, all of the links to the Twitter accounts and also LinkedIn. So if you need to chat or ask any questions after this session, if you want to contact our panelists, you may do so. So all the information will be there. The contact is dropped in the discussion box. Donc, lorsque cette session sera terminée, si vous souhaitez poursuivre les discussions, poser des questions à l'un des panélistes, n'hésitez pas, chers participants, dans la boîte de clavardage, il y a l'information en lien avec tous les liens dans les médias sociaux. Donc, alors, on peut clavarder, on peut envoyer des petits messages LinkedIn, Twitter et tout ça. Alors, toute l'information est là. So at this point in time, we're going to ask our panelists some questions, and then this will be followed by questions from you, dear participants. So if you have any questions that you'd like to ask, you may do so in the Q&A box as well. But just to start, I'm going to ask Deepika and Anya the first question. So I would like to have fun and to be creative, but the government of Canada often seems full of red tape and bureaucracy. So where are the places that I can innovate? Who would like to start? Deepika, I think you're on mute at this time.
I'm going to start, if you don't mind, Anya.
Absolutely.
That sounds great. So my answer to this starts with a both and, which is the GC is both full of red tape and it offers huge potential for creativity. And it could be that because it's so full of red tape and bureaucracy and fixed mindsets, it offers huge potential for creativity and folks who are innovative. So I'd like to, just draw attention to the idea that constraints can often stimulate creativity in ways that really push people out of their comfort zones. And that's never a bad thing. But of course, it's more complicated than that, because constraints can also kill creativity. And finding the through line always seems to be, it always seems to rest on the shoulders of those advocating change. So you do need to get good at finding the through line. One of the key lessons I've learned is that creativity and innovation are not solo sports, and confronting and addressing constraints can be a completely different experience when it's a collective experience, when you're working with others. So find collaborators. My where can you innovate is not necessarily a where, it's, how do you innovate? I think one of the ways you do that is to find collaborators or to connect with an already existing enabling network. And the GC has been testing ideas since at least 2013 is when I remember it. I mean, as an enterprise, I remember it before at the Public Health Agency as early as 2011. But the GC has been really experimenting with lots of different ways to connect ideas and resources with people with passion. So I would say that an enabling network is really key to your progress as an innovator and your ability to express your creativity. And I would say that also the how includes when you find your collaborators, think about the shared outcomes. Don't necessarily hold tightly to your ideas, but hold tightly to shared outcomes and build together in ways that build trust.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Deepika. I like how you're talking about constraints that can sometimes be, that can create that creativity or also sometimes can kill it. And I think it's very interesting that you're mentioning finding collaborators and really connecting in that way. Thank you for sharing. So again, my question is, it's the same question actually. So Ania, if you'd like to have anything you'd like to share.
Est-ce que je peux juste dire ditto? Je pense que c'est la même chose. My ideas are very similar, Deepika. I would say that when there are constraints and limitations and barriers, sometimes that's when we get really magical things happening. And I think we're going to talk about it probably a little bit later on, but if we look at the last year, I think we've seen a lot of examples of that. Throw us a challenge and people rise to the occasion. And I think we see that in a lot of different parts of the public service. So I do feel like there's a lot of opportunity to innovate and be creative, even if there is some red tape, and even if that's an and not a but or an or. I also think it's really important to find your collaborators, as Deepika said, find the people who are your allies, people who are going to work with you on different initiatives. And if you're finding that you're getting a bunch of roadblocks, because that can happen, there can be organizations that are a little bit less willing to, I guess, be open to ideas or innovate. And I would say there are other ways of doing that outside of your kind of regular day job. So look for those networks, look for those volunteer opportunities, look for those committees to join, look for those people who can be on board with you in terms of creative ideas and creative spaces. So my message really is simple. It's find an environment that's going to allow you to thrive and be creative and be yourself and innovate.
Wonderful. Thank you, Ania. Finding that environment that allows us to thrive. I agree. Wonderful. Erin, the same question for you, mais en français cette fois, n'est-ce pas? Alors, si on a envie de s'amuser, d'être créatif, mais on constate que parfois, au sein du gouvernement du Canada, ça semble être rempli de ce qu'on appelle en anglais le red tape. Donc, parfois, il y a un petit peu de bureaucratie. Alors, quels sont les endroits où on peut innover, Erin?
Oui, merci beaucoup. Et j'aime ça parce que ça me donne l'occasion de pratiquer mon français aussi. Donc, excellent. Selon moi, c'est plus une question de pas où, mais comment. Parce que je pense qu'on peut trouver du travail créatif dans n'importe quel poste, n'importe quel ministère, etc. Donc, c'est une question de comment. Et si je me demande cette question-là, il faut réfléchir un petit peu sur la culture, l'équipe, et ça va regarder peut-être un petit peu différent autour des ministères. Donc, j'ai commencé mon carrière comme scientifique et l'innovation dans cet environnement et culture-là, ça a l'air tellement différent que peut-être dans un endroit où on travaille avec des politiques ou peut-être d'autres choses. Donc, je pense qu'on peut trouver de l'innovation n'importe où, mais il faut penser à comment on peut le faire dans notre environnement. Et comme Deepika, elle a dit que c'est des constraints. Il faut réfléchir sur ces choses-là et vraiment pousser et pousser. Donc, c'est ma réponse.
Merci beaucoup, Erin. Donc, il y a des possibilités, il suffit de dénicher, de trouver justement des occasions où on peut devenir créatif malgré tout. Merci pour ça. Excellent. Back to you, Deepika. Now, we'd like to know how does innovation relate to creativity? That's a really great question, actually.
I love this question. And if you'll permit me, I'm going to nerd out a bit on this question and say that decades ago, I'm talking about the 50s and 60s, before innovation became an all-encompassing business buzzword, and then more recently, a governance buzzword, innovation signaled something very specific. It signaled a type of change that was completely new and different than what came before. In contrast, adaptation signaled an improvement or the ability to do more of something or better of something. And I really appreciate this clarity. So I find value in keeping these two concepts separate, innovation on the one hand and adaptation or improvement on the other hand, if only to debuzz and defuzz the words we use. Now, interestingly, innovation and adaptation are both really important forms of creativity, and specifically, they're forms of creative problem solving or applied creativity. So I'm going to stop nerding out now, but for me, I think that innovation is something very specific, and it is a form of creativity.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Deepika. I love how you're debuzzing and defuzzing these two concepts and words. I love how we're sharing here. Wonderful. Now back to you, Ania. And since we're still on topic of creativity, my question to you is, how have you found ways to tap in your creativity in the Government of Canada?
Yeah, that's another great question. So my mindset on this one is that if you have, where there's a will, there's a way. If you have a desire to be creative and to do things in a bit of a different way, you're going to find that opportunity no matter what type of role you're in. So I've been really fortunate in my career. I've had about 15 jobs in the last 20 years. So either I'm fortunate or no one wants to keep me around. I'm not sure which, but I feel like I'm fortunate. So I've been able to go into really interesting areas that I've had absolutely no experience and learn from the team and learn from the environment and be able to grow through that. And I think the only way that I've managed to survive in all those different roles has been the fact that I've been able to be a little bit creative. I haven't had to necessarily adjust to the messages that say we've always done it this way and we have to keep doing it this way. I've actually challenged the status quo a little bit and asked different questions, and I've had lots of flexibility as well. So really it's, I would say, more a testament probably to my leadership and my teams. I've been able to take things in the direction that I think they need to go in. And from my perspective, it really is about experimenting and being open and ready to make mistakes, because again, that's where I feel like really the magic happens, when we can learn from things that maybe don't go exactly as we would like, but we actually build on that experience for the next time round, because we'll likely see it in another year or so in a bit of a different way. So I've been really, really fortunate, and I've also been surrounded by really creative colleagues and team members, and I think that really helps. For me, there's a bit of a snowball effect there. So when you're around creative people and that energy, you see really good things happening.
Thank you, Ania, for sharing. I agree with the snowball effect, and I like that you mentioned when there's a will, there's a way, right? We can always find our way around. Excellent. Now, since we're talking about creativity, and we know sometimes we need to hire creative people, and how can we measure creativity? So my question to Erin will be asked in French. Erin, comment est-ce qu'on fait pour recruter des personnes créatives? Lorsqu'on veut faire partie, on veut qu'ils soient partie intégrante de notre équipe, comment on les recrute, puis comment est-ce qu'on mesure la créativité?
Excellent. Encore, c'est une autre question que, que je me demande à chaque jour, parce que j'ai deux équipes qui sont chargées avec l'innovation. Donc, on essaie pour moi, c'est qu'on essaie de rechercher les compétences et non les expériences, parce que des fois, on peut trouver quelqu'un qui travaille pour toute sa carrière dans les politiques, qui peut-être a les compétences pour être quelqu'un qui pourra être excellent dans la conception des services. Alors, quelqu'un qui a les compétences de recherche, d'analyste, de communication, etc. So, donc, je vais répondre mi-français, mi-anglais maintenant. So, I think it's important that with creativity, it comes in all shapes and sizes, and that we don't put it in a box. where we think that it's only one kind of person with one kind of background. So for me, it's about being diverse. There's a net gain with diversity in terms of creativity, different perspectives, different backgrounds, different lived experiences, etc. So I look more about what are those core competencies, and then I try to bring in diverse teams and give them the space to do it. But to flip it, donc aussi, il faut avoir les bons leaders à la même fois. Donc, pour les employés, rechercher les endroits et les leaders où vous pensiez qu'il va avoir une chance pour être un petit peu créatif. I won't name the other panelists, but I've worked with one of the other panelists in an environment where we didn't have leadership support to be creative, and we both left that place very quickly. So I think that's just to flip it back to the employee. Also do your homework and find those places where you think you can you're going to be supported by leadership, and you can be creative as well.
Excellent. Thank you, Erin. I love how it ties into Anya's comment a while ago, speaking about leadership as well, right? So that snowball effect and really finding these people. Excellent. Donc, on parle de leadership, on parle de créativité. J'aime qu'il y a vraiment des buzzwords qui se dégagent de chacune de vos interventions. Il y a vraiment beaucoup de liens au niveau de vos parcours professionnels. Ma prochaine question, elle est adressée à Deepika. Donc, en français, la question que je vais lui poser en anglais, c'est quels obstacles à l'innovation avez-vous rencontrés et comment est-ce que vous les avez surmontés? So, Deepika, what barriers to innovation have you encountered and how have you overcome them? And I invite you to activate your microphone if possible, Deepika. Thank you.
Sorry about that. I mean, this is a great question. It really, when I was preparing an answer, it really I just think about all of the lessons that I've earned over the last decade of doing this work in the GC. And I'll say that this answer probably requires, how I'm going to position this answer today requires some straight talk. And I hope that there's space for this. I'll be starting off with, what I think for some folks might seem like a controversial statement. It's not very controversial based on my experience and when I watch the experience of others over the last decade of innovating. But that culture persists now. So I would say that policy innovation often includes a lot of resistance, a lot of mansplaining, and a lot of chasing after shiny baubles and/or performing innovation without actually changing anything. And quite frankly, the innovation theater aspect of the GC, it remains exhausting. And I feel like it's connected to some other dominant cultural aspects that permeate the GC. So it's definitely there in the environment. There are lots and lots of barriers, and they present themselves in lots and lots of different ways. And I'm going to go back to things that Erin has said and things that Anya has said, and where I started off in the conversation as well. How I overcome this is I've really learned to be more discerning about the people that I build relationships with. And I really value relationships that are reciprocal, respectful, and highly productive, with space for trust and with space for critical thinking, as well as creativity. That can be a tall order for folks, or it can be a taller order for folks in the GC than it should be. But trust that your peeps are out there, and know that when you find them and when you start working with them, beautiful things will happen. When I was a younger public servant, I was really, really hungry to innovate. And I found myself in a lot of unsavory situations and with unsavory personalities. As a more experienced innovator, I know that my creativity and courage and integrity need to be in alignment for me to feel good about the work that I'm doing And that's actually my responsibility. So if I find myself in a situation where I feel like I have to make compromises that don't fit my sense of integrity and don't necessarily align with who I am and my values, I'll try and leave that situation. What I want folks to know, especially folks who are at the beginning of their federal service careers, is that you don't actually have to compromise. If as you look for opportunities to express your innovation and creativity inside the GC, you find yourself in situations that trouble you, I just want you to trust that there are so many opportunities to exercise your abilities and skills outside of the GC. And that's probably not a really popular conversation in GC circles, but people are really, really hungry for your skills outside the GC. Even as you are a paid employee of the GC, you can find ways to engage in community service that fulfill your need to innovate and fulfill your need to serve and fulfill your expression of creativity. And oftentimes those spaces are filled with way less bureaucracy and way less red tape to boot. Again, that's not an easy answer, but it is an honest one. And it's one that I have one foot inside and one foot outside all the time. I just want to say innovators in this enterprise are rare and precious. People who have the ability to combine dreaming and doing, you don't find them all the time. So if you are one of those people and you find yourself in context where you feel like you're being treated poorly, do what you do best, which is to invent new options, this time for yourself.
Thank you so much, Deepika. I was taking notes going, oh my, yes, that's right. You were right. That wasn't an easy question, but thank you for your great and honest answer. I heard lots of great words coming to your trust values. So really listening to your inner voice, right? There are different ways and possibilities to go about what we want to be innovative, either outside or inside, right? The box. Thank you for sharing, Deepika. Ania, I would like to ask you the following question. This is another great question, by the way. How do you ensure that everyone's voices are heard at the table? And how do you ensure that doers and dreamers have a place at the table, and how do they melt? So I'm just going to translate the question in French before you answer, if I may. Donc, comment est-ce qu'on fait en sorte que la voix de chacun soit entendue à la table? Puis comment s'assurer que les faiseurs et les rêveurs ont une place à cette table-là? Puis comment est-ce qu'on peut les rassembler ensemble?
Yeah, I almost feel like Deepika should be given a kick at this one because she just so eloquently talked about some of the challenges that all of us have probably experienced. And if you haven't experienced it yet, you may at some point in your career. So it's not easy to get that right balance of getting people to the table. I think we all think that we do a good job of it. We all think that we're probably being inclusive and we're engaging at, diverse opinions, and there's probably a lot more work to do on that front. So I feel like I'm still learning. I feel like keeping an open mind and again, just trying to challenge our own assumptions and our own biases is an important part of that. I feel like a really simple message, but much more difficult to accomplish, is to really get to know your team members, your colleagues, your clients, your stakeholders, whomever you're interacting with in terms of your day job. That helps to get people to the table. When you know what they're passionate about, when you know what their superpowers are, when you know what gets them excited, sometimes there's a whole lot more behind every person that we meet in the workspace. And making sure that we really know who we're working with and figuring out how to get those ideas to the table so that it's not just the same voices. Some of what Deepika said really resonated with me because I do think that we can have experiences in our career where voices are shut down or squelched, and trying to make sure that we're finding the right environment, again, to thrive in, where we're supported, and again, diversity of views and perspectives are not just encouraged, but they're the norm, is really the type of place that I want to be in. So I do think we have a role as an employee, regardless of what level and title we have. I think we have a much bigger role as a leader to make sure that we're getting a variety of different voices at the table and making sure that those voices are both the doers and the dreamers, and it's not an easy balance. I'm going to be really honest.
Thank you for your also honest and deep answer, Ania. And it goes back to leadership, right? So you have mentioned leadership employees at all levels and supervisors and managers as well. Donc, oui, c'est vraiment une question de balance, puis c'est vraiment le rôle de tous et chacun, hein, à tous les niveaux, exactement. Je vois qu'il y a aussi plein de commentaires dans la boîte de discussion clavardage. Donc, les participants sont tout à fait d'accord avec vos interventions, puis aussi vous remercient. So we have great comments in the discussion box as well, reminding participants, so all 100 of you, that you can ask your questions in the Q&R box at this time. In just a few minutes, we're just going to go back to these and answer your questions. Donc, si vous avez des questions à l'intention des panélistes, vous êtes invités et je vous réitère l'invitation, en fait, de les ajouter dans la boîte de questions-réponses, et vous pouvez toujours aussi discuter dans la boîte de clavardage. So a question for all three panelists, so or one of you or two of you if you'd like to answer. So in both official languages, this question goes as follows. So not everyone wants to be creative and constantly in a state of change. And we touched on this just a few minutes ago. So how do I know which I am and how much change is suitable for me? Donc en français, la question c'est pas tout le monde qui souhaite nécessairement être créatif ou créative, toujours être en état de changement. Comment savoir qui je suis, puis à quel degré de changement, quel est le degré de changement qui me convient? So Deepika or Erin or Anya, would someone like to share on this topic, this specific question?
Donc, je peux commencer. Ça va?
Merci.
C'est une autre question vraiment appropriée avec le travail que nous faisons à Transport Canada. Donc, avec tous les projets de transformation, on essaie d'avoir un autre élément de gestion de changement parce que je trouve que s'il y a trop de change, s'il y a trop d'innovation, des fois les employés ne nous suivent pas parce qu'il y a trop de choses qui se passent à la même fois. Donc, on essaie d'ajouter un élément de gestion de changement parce que it's really important that change management approaches are used because they're actually based on behaviors, human behaviors. And, you know, we talk about the 7 factors of grief, 7 or 6 or whatever it is. It's the same kind of thing when it comes to change. So we have to manage it. So our approach is to make sure that change management, la gestion du changement, est intégrée avec nos gros projets de transformation.
Excellent. Merci, Erin. Donc, c'est vrai, lorsqu'on on génère beaucoup de changements, parfois, ce n'est pas nécessairement tout le monde qui est au même niveau. Donc, c'est tout à fait vrai d'avoir cette gestion, cette bonne gestion de changement-là au sein de nos équipes. Thank you. Merci, Erin. Would you like to add on to this question, Deepika or Anya?
I guess I would say that there's a lot of inner work we need to do as individuals around change, in the sense that change is probably happening all the time. And there are certain types of change that we resist and certain types of change that we welcome. And it might just be, you know, for people who are feeling that way about change, like this question is actually, how do I know which I am and how much change is suitable for me? I kind of feel like the question is to do the self-reflection, right? And to do it maybe in a way that is guided by, if it's a really honest and earnest question, guided by a coach, guided by a trusted mentor, so that you can kind of figure out for yourself, how much change am I willing to tolerate, and under what conditions am I willing to tolerate it?
Absolutely. Thank you, Pipika. You're right. So self-evaluation, especially in the past year, right? We've been through a lot of change. Anya.
That's exactly what I was going to say, Isabel. I think we have to always think about the environment that we're operating within. And if we reflect on the last 13 or 14 months, we probably want to be really kind to ourselves when we're thinking about how tolerant we are to change, or whether or not we're ready for a change, because our answer today might be pretty different from 6 months' time. So my suggestion is really just, yes, definitely be self-aware and reflect, but also be very conscious of the environment that you're surrounded by and that you're operating within, and remembering that these are really unique times, and what you're feeling right now could very easily be different.
Absolutely. Different times. Thank you, Anya. Now, this is the part that I like the most. Answering questions for participants. So thank you for voting, dear participants. Merci d'avoir voté. Je vois qu'il y a eu des petits pouces pour plusieurs des questions. So I'm going to, dear panelists, so Erin, Anya, and Deepika, feel free to answer if you have something you'd like to share. So the first question would be, how can my team and I generate more ideas and avoid the not so great ones? Donc en français, la question c'est dans quelles circonstances ou comment mon équipe et moi pouvons générer de bonnes idées et peut-être éviter celles qui sont peut-être moins bonnes. Anya, yes.
So I kind of have the view that there's no bad idea. Maybe that's a little bit naive, but sometimes it's just not the right time for your idea or the idea. So the question's a really good one about how do you generate better ideas at the right time that are going to actually have traction and get the support that's needed, and or be the ones that are going to have the biggest impact. So my view is a little bit like the question that was asked earlier, creating a space that's going to allow people to generate ideas and do so in a judgment-free environment where they're in a safe space and they're able to just brainstorm and throw out what they think might help to fix the problem. I always like to ask that question of my team, like, what's the problem we're trying to fix? Because I do think quite often that's the best place to start. And then, taking stock of what all those ideas are and figuring out, again, looking at your environment, what is practical at this stage, because it might be that you have 50 really great ideas, but only 5 of them are really practical right now, given the conditions that you're operating within. So my view is set the conditions to get the really great feedback from a variety of different voices, and then do a bit of an assessment as to what is practical to be able to move forward, given what you know.
Excellent. Thank you, Anya.
I'm really similar to Anya on this one. I might approach it with different questions, and that would be, but I think it's problem definition and then idea generation. So what I might say is, if I was in a team context, I'd pull people to a table and ask them to elaborate everything they know about the given situation that we're calling a problem. And so that, doing an inventory of everything we know about the problem. And then I would probably go through a process of outlining everything we don't know about the problem. And that creates a bit of space to generate ideas about not only how we think about the problem, but then how we generate ideas about to address the problem eventually. But I don't know, I'm a really strong believer in focusing on identifying and using a bunch of creative tools to really, really understand the problem itself, and then how people around the table understand the problem.
Thank you, Deepika. So we're going back at the root and then identifying, and yes, excellent. Thumbs up. Erin, would you like to share anything? Est-ce que vous avez quelque chose à partager en lien avec cette question?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I agree with my colleagues. I think the short answer is don't stop generating those bad ideas because you just don't know when those good ideas are going to come through. But also consider when you're in the divergent thinking part of generating ideas and the convergent thinking part of of ideation. So divergent thinking, we encourage lots of ideas. Convergent thinking is kind of tying into what Deepika said around, okay, what's realistic? What's the problem? Where are the gaps? Where do we need to narrow things down? And so, in short, I would say, do not try to stop generating bad ideas.
Wonderful, thank you, Erin. I agree. Do not stop generating. Donc, on essaie de pas décortiquer le fait que c'est une bonne ou une mauvaise idée. On les génère toutes, puis ensuite on fait le tri là-dedans. Excellent, thank you. Question that had lots of little thumbs up. Donc, une question qui semble avoir été populaire. How do we become a doer instead of a dreamer? Donc, comment est-ce qu'on devient un faiseur ou une faiseuse plutôt que quelqu'un qui rêve? Who would like to start? Thinking of their answers first.
Well, I can. I'll take a quick stab, and I would say that depending on where you are in your confidence in your career, find the right environment to become a doer. It's easier to be doers in some environments and gain the confidence, and then try to push in environments that it might be a little bit harder to be a doer in. So you might seek a mentor who can help you, or a coach, or align yourself in a good organization would be my one suggestion.
Excellent. Thank you, Erin. It goes back to what Deepika was sharing a while ago too. Exactly. So find that right environment. You're never stuck, right? Deepika, I see your mic is unmuted.
Yeah, I loved the title of this panel, Dreamers and Doers. It's taken me a long time to become both a dreamer and a doer, and a lot of practice. If you asked me though, if I could only choose one, which would I choose? Especially in the GC, I would choose dreamer, because we have a lot of doers in the GC. And something that I learned a long time ago is it's easy to take a big idea and make it small. It is really hard to take a small idea and make it big. And so we need people with big ideas. But we also need to surround people with big ideas with people who have the doing skills. And we need to learn how to create a language or a knowledge transfer between people with those two skills. And it goes back to what I talked about between innovation, the big, bold idea, and adaptation, being able to bring that idea life incrementally, bit by bit, to life incrementally, bit by bit. And so, yeah, it's a real process to move from dreamer to doer, but certainly worth it. And if you're not finding your jam inside the GC, so I'm going to just like take a moment really quickly to tell a story. I really wanted to work in an open innovation space. They're really few and far between in the GC. I was really thinking about it when COVID hit, and there was an opportunity at the very outer edge of my Twitter network. A woman that I knew lots of people who knew this woman. People talked really highly of her. They said, oh, Deepika, you must meet her. And to her, they said, you must meet Deepika. And so she put out this tweet and said, I'm pulling a bunch of people together who are interested in international health equity to talk about COVID from the international perspective. And if you're watching the news right now, as we're still in the fire a little bit, but it's a much smaller fire than what we're seeing in different parts of the world now, right? And so she was kind of a year before we ended up in this situation. She was kind of thinking, how do we start to think forward to that situation? So she pulled this ragtag group of people together who had, like were a bit dazed and confused because everything had just shut down, and a lot of them were international contractors and things like that. And she just pulled us together in an open innovation space, and we just started to work together. And it was all virtual work. I've never met any of the people that I've worked with face to face, but we actually delivered some really big projects really fast and really effectively. So I wanted to surround myself with a different group of doers, and the opportunity just happened to hit my radar. So again, the opportunities might not be in the GC. Look for the opportunities that work best for you, that allow you to meet your short, medium, and long-term goals. The world is changing really dramatically right now, where the GC isn't necessarily the sole provider of opportunities to do this type of work. So that's a really important recognition. But yeah, like if you want to do, I learned this year, if you want to learn how to do, surround yourself with doers who are aligned to your values.
Excellent. Thank you, Deepika. Thank you for sharing. That was a great opportunity for you.
Yeah, it was.
You never know in the virtual world. Merci pour ce partage-là. Ania, is there anything you wanted to share with regard to this question?
I'll just say something fairly short and sweet. Figure out what success is to you when you want to be a doer. And I totally agree with what Deepika said around the fact that we actually have a lot of doers in the federal public service. We're really fortunate. We don't have as many dreamers. So when you look to being a doer, figure out why you want to be a doer, figure out what success looks like to you, and please don't abandon being a dreamer, because we need lots of dreamers.
Thank you, Ania. So surrounding ourselves with both, finally, doers and dreamers. Donc, on ne peut pas arrêter d'être l'un ou l'autre. Merci, thank you. Another question that had lots of little thumbs up. Donc, une autre question qui a été populaire. How does one be creative, innovative when we're starting in a new role and may not be aware of all factors involved when suggesting new ideas? Ah, ça, c'est vraiment intéressant. Alors, comment est-ce qu'on fait pour être créatif et innovateur, innovatrice lorsqu'on débute dans un nouveau travail, un nouveau poste, puis on n'est pas nécessairement toujours conscient de tous les facteurs qui sont, qui entourent tout ça lorsqu'on parle de générer des nouvelles idées?
I'm gonna answer this one really quickly and just say approach it as an anthropologist would. You're entering a new culture, you're entering with curiosity, you're entering with inquiry, you're asking a lot of questions in a really humble kind of way. And I think it's just such a beautiful opportunity to learn from your colleagues what they already know.
Absolutely. Great ways to learn from one another. Merci. Thank you, Deepika. I see Aaron has his mic.
Oui, juste pour peut-être ajouter un peu à la réponse de Deepika, prenez votre temps. Donc, faites toutes les choses que Deepika a mentionnées, mais prenez votre temps. C'est pas urgent. Donc, prenez votre temps avec la exploration du culture.
Absolutely. Merci, Aaron. Thank you. So take our time exploring. Ania.
I'll just add one point to that. I think it's really important as well to not lose sight of that freshness, that new environment that you're in, and that feeling that you have and everything that you're observing. So the idea of observing is really important in terms of being able to be creative and being able to be innovative. And I see it as almost like being put in a petri dish when you go into a new organization, because everything is different, it's new, and we take lots of notes of what's different from where we were before. And I just think that's a really rich opportunity to think about how things could perhaps be a little bit different. Think about what you've seen in different environments that could potentially be useful in this environment. And I definitely agree with what colleagues have said. Don't put pressure on yourself to make change right away or create new innovative ideas right away, but look at the fact that you're going to really have a lot of ideas coming quickly, and you're going to want to likely ground truth those or have some signal checks from other people along the way that will help you frame where you might want to take things. But don't lose sight of all that, all those fresh ideas that are going to come your way.
Excellent. Thank you, Anya. We understand that we have lots of questions in the Q&A box. Unfortunately, we'll have to take one last one before the final question or the closing question. So our last question from the Q&A box, la dernière question, elle est déjà toute traduite en fait. So should creativity be a strategic priority? And can creativity be trained? Donc, est-ce que la créativité, elle doit être une priorité stratégique? Puis, est-ce qu'elle peut être formée ou est-ce qu'on peut être entraîné en lien avec la créativité?
Oh, go ahead, Deepika.
No, Anya, please.
I was just going to say, I think it is definitely a strategic priority. I think it's a competency, actually, maybe is a better word than a strategic priority. I feel like it's already part of our regular competencies that we have within the public service. The question around whether or not it can be trained, I think we can all learn to be more creative. I think some people are more predisposed to it because of their personalities, what they've been exposed to, but I do think there's an opportunity for all of us to turn on those creative switches a little bit more. Sometimes we get into, I'll speak for myself, sometimes I feel like I get task-oriented or results-oriented, and I need to kind of step back and remind myself, wait a minute, there's far more to my job and there's far more to working with all these wonderful people than just, delivering on X or Y. It's also about how do we do that in a new way. So.
Thank you, Anya. New ways, turning on that little switch. Deepika.
Sure. The imp in me wants to say, nope, you're born with it, or you're not born with it. But the educated person in me and the reasonable person in me understands completely that these are skills that you can stretch. Our brains are, we have this notion of plasticity. And so, of course, we can always learn. And I really like a simple exercise that people have used with me is to show me the picture of an inside of a refrigerator, right? To show a group the picture of an inside of a refrigerator, and then have them generate as many ideas as possible for dishes that you can cook with the food inside that refrigerator, right? And so we're engaged in creativity every day, whether we bring it to the GC or not, or whether the GC allows us to bring it into the GC or not. Those are separate questions, but yes, everyone is creative.
Everyone is creative. I love that exercise with the fridge.
So much fun.
Aaron, is there something you'd like to share? Est-ce que vous aimeriez partager quelque chose?
Yeah, so I'll just add, with all of these competencies, I would agree creativity is a competency, and we can sort of assess it as a competency. But remember that everything has a floor and a ceiling. So there are lots of positives to creativity, but think about so that's the ceiling, but think about what the floor of that competency is. So for me, it's about understanding the switch, how much to dial it in or not, because sometimes we're under a very tight deadline. We know what we have to do, and the time for creativity is not that time. So we also need the EQ to support that competency of creativity on top of that. So strategic priority, yeah, I think so. But then the other question about learning it, I think it's part of learning it, but part of knowing how far to dial it in, and more importantly, when not to dial it in.
Definitely. Thank you, Aaron. Unfortunately, already there, one last question for all of you panelists. We talked about change. We talked about the last year. We know that we've turned many of us into a virtual world and a pandemic. So my question for you is, how did COVID provide a unique opportunity to be creative and therefore innovative? Donc, dans ce contexte-là où on a un virage virtuel pour la plupart des gens, la COVID, est-ce qu'elle a-t-elle fourni une occasion d'être créatif et d'être innovant?
I can kick things off if you like. I would say we had no choice, and I would say that everyone rose to the occasion, and it was remarkable. And for anyone who hasn't read the Ottawa Citizen article from last week, there's lots of examples in there of what many of the departments did kind of on a macro level, but there are millions of examples out there on a micro level that we've all witnessed. And I do think that it was a really great opportunity for the public service to shine. And the really, I guess the way that we'll really measure success is if we can actually hold on to this and make sure that we continue to, break through processes and work in an innovative way and be creative and just really push the envelope in different ways to be able to make the public service the best that it possibly can be.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Thank you, Anya.
So I can go next. So I'm going to just answer yes, and then I'm going to talk a little bit more personally. So yes, it's given opportunities. I'll just be honest, I'm having one of the most difficult days of my career today, and it all comes down to just have compassion for your fellow employees in this situation. I have a situation where someone is upset with someone else because of background noise of kids in their environment. We just need to be hyper compassionate with our colleagues, our leaders, our friends. Like, there's so much going on in people's lives. Like, I think COVID is highlighting the fact that we're all individuals and we all have things. So please just be compassionate to those around you. It's a difficult situation for everyone. And yes, it's unlocked a lot of other things, but there's just something that's going on for me right now, and having to deal with that situation on my team. So please just be compassionate. Thank you.
Absolutely, Erin. Reminding everyone to be compassionate in this time, right? Donc, c'est vraiment la compassion, puis oui, vous avez tout à fait raison, Erin. Merci pour ce partage de personnel. Deepika.
I just really agree with Anya and Erin. And I think the only other thing that I would add is I'm really curious to see what the GC is like in years to come. I think that it's very easy to look at leadership in the now and talk about what is happening or what isn't happening. But the truth is that we've had 30 to 40 years of policymaking that has brought us to this point and that has allowed us to weather or not weather this situation. And so I think that if we are honest with ourselves about that, then we can, as an enterprise, embrace a new type of renaissance. If we are not honest about that with ourselves, as we are on the cusp of potentially more and multiple crises, then I think that we could really stagnate. So I think we're kind of at a place of choice as individuals and as communities and as teams and departments. And I would kind of say that, I'm hopeful as a human, and I would like to see the right things happen as a community and as an enterprise.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Deepika. Wow, that was a great last question. It is 3:30 here in New Brunswick, so elsewhere in Canada earlier. So thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, panelists. Thank you, Anya. Thank you, Erin. Thank you, Deepika, so much for sharing your expertise, your knowledge, your great tips with us. Merci énormément pour vos partages, aussi très personnels. Merci pour votre expertise. Ça a été un plaisir et un privilège de vous entendre. Merci aux participants. Thank you, participants, also for your great questions for all panelists. Reminding you that in the discussion box, we did drop the LinkedIn, Twitter account, so all of these information that you, if you need to contact Deepika, Erin, or Anya after this session. Donc, vous aurez accès à leurs coordonnées. On vous rappelle également de suivre le réseau des jeunes fonctionnaires fédéraux via les médias sociaux pour en connaître davantage sur les prochaines sessions et toutes les activités, les superbes activités qui sont organisées pour vous fonctionnaires fédéraux. So we invite you also to follow the Federal Youth Network, all their social media accounts to see, and the website to learn more on the upcoming events. Donc, merci infiniment. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful week. Passez une superbe semaine.
Bye, everyone. Au revoir.
Merci. Bye.
Ciao.